In this chapter, we're going to look at the number of commands that will allow you to create complex shape using some of the basic tools in the toolbox. We'll also be looking at grouping and aligning objects, and we will end it with creating a logo. Basic shapes are building blocks of image creation and can be manipulated by using some of the basic shaping commands. Let's take a look at those now. We have learned that when we select the element on the screen, and it will also change state depending what objects we have selected. So here I'm going to select the second element with my shift key holding, and now I have a series of shaping commands here. On the interactive property bar, the first one is combine. We'll take two elements and combine them together, and it will create a knockout where we have an overlap. Now, one thing I should point this out is originally my objects were blue with green outline and red and black outline. The resultant object is blue and green outline. This happened because I selected the blue object later. Now I'm going to select the element first here and then press my shift key and select this one. I'll click combine again, and now you see it is the opposite. It is based on the last object I selected. I'll undo that. The next command on the interactive property bar is the weld command. Now the weld command will act as though we are welding two objects together. Thinking of pieces of metal in a machine shop, they become one. So when I click on this icon here, it is going to weld these two objects together, and yes, it is going to keep the color of the last object selected. I'm going to undo this command. Let's say the next command is the trim. The trim will affect the last object selected. So if I click this icon here, it will cut out this object. I'll just Control Z that command. Next we have intersect. So if I select this object, I'll select the purple and this. I'll give it intersect. As you can see here, we created a third object where the objects were overlapping each other. I'll just select all these three elements and click on simplify. Let's just check. Okay. Click on simplify. It acts as a cookie cutter. Now, if we take this ellipse out and this says out, it is going to cut out each other. So you can see it's been a cutout from each other, cutting each other out. Overlapping things will cut each other out. Let me do just a couple of undos and go back into place with everything selected. Now we have this boundary option, create boundary, and now we see we have a boundary here. Creates an outline around the perimeter of all objects selected. This is a very powerful command, and it's used in quite a number of different scenarios where designers need to create an outline around an object, usually to create a cut or simply to put a border around them. Now we'll look at grouping and ungrouping. Okay. So we'll look at group, ungroup, and ungroup all. as well as selecting objects within a group. Let's start by explaining what this group is. Grouping gives you ability to hold objects together. Think of group of pencils with an elastic band tied around them. If you move, they all move in unison with that. So this artwork here, if I select and I move it, I am moving this entire object. I'm just going to move that back into my place using Control Z. If I'm going to do my Shift F2 and have this object selected, now I'm going to deselect this. Now if we look at the object docker, you can see we have a couple bunch of groups here in the page 1. Layer 1 and page 1 as well. So this one is locked right now. Okay. So this one is a group of 64 objects. It's better to keep it locked. Okay. So if I expand this, I'm not ungrouping that. I can see what's within this group. I can see that I have a group of 9 objects here. Here I have a group of 8 objects. Rectangle, ellipse, group of, within that there's a group of 5 objects having curves, ellipses, and so on and so forth. So if I select the top group, just make this a top group. And if I click on the Ungroup from the Object menu, go to Ungroup, Group, Ungroup. You can use the shortcut Control U as well. Now these are basically individual objects and you can access them individually. They are not linked to each other like they were before. Now if I have a group, I want to select an object within that group, then I can simply, I'll just give it undo and get this group back here. Okay, so say this is a group, and it's simply a matter of holding Control and I can select that object by clicking on that element. So what you'll notice is if I do Shift F2, you can see that the sizing handles are round dots rather than square elements. This is an indication that the object I selected is within the group. If I was to zoom back out to my design, Shift F2, and give Shift F2, hold this, Control click and Shift F2. Once again, so if I select Ungroup now, that is going to break down the elements into separate groups. If I do Ungroup all, I can do it from my Object menu. Go to Group, Ungroup all, select outside. I'll just select all these and then go back to Group, Ungroup all. I can do this from here, and if I go down to here, if I click here and I can see I do not have any groups now at all. They're on the separate layer. These groups exist here, but in this layer I don't have any groups anymore. So basically grouping and ungrouping allows you to contain objects together. So if I was to move a group of elements over a top of an object or top of a design that was ungrouped, and I can move that around easily without getting everything all mixed up. So basically it's a way to organize your file, group the elements together, or group portions of design together. So it makes it easier to work with. Now let's take a look at some of the alignment commands. Let's take a new page here. So we have 3 pages here. Okay, I get to new document here. Alright, take a few bunch of squares. Control D, Control D, select this, Control D. I'll keep them unarranged for now. Control D and put them right like so. Right, so, and also I'm gonna have a few circles here. Back of the page, maybe I want to increase this size. Control D. Control D and make this bigger. More, right click, order, back of the page. So I have a bunch of objects here. Control D, one more maybe. Increase that. Green. Right click, order to the back of the page. Okay. So now we can explore align and distribute object command. So when you're laying out a design or project, it is important to make sure that the objects are properly lined up. This will give a more professional and polished look to your document. It is very easy to align these things in CorelDRAW. I'll start with the keyboard shortcuts. Alignment is based on the last object selected. So I'm going to select this element here. Now with the Shift key held down, I'm going to select all these, or maybe you can drag here. And press T. And you'll notice that they're all aligned to the top. And press B, they're aligned at the bottom. L for left, R for right, and C for center, and E for even. So if you had a series of objects and you want them to be perfectly lined up with the left, then you can select those objects and tap the letter L, and they will all be lined up as per the left alignment. Now about the stacking order, you'll observe here in the object stalker that my black, this is green object, okay, make me like here, okay, this is the at the bottom. So if I click, select my object and move it up in the top of here, it will overshadow all the other objects. On the property bar, you can see to the back of the layer is activated now. I can click on this and it will bring it back. Under my objects menu, you can also use this order: front of the page, front of layer, front one, in front of particular object, or behind a particular object. So for example, in front of will be in front of this object. So it is front of here. This rectangle will be selected and it came in right in front of that. So let's take it back. Okay. You can also click and drag and arrange these objects within the layer. So we also have some other alignment commands. Say I'm going to select these elements here, select this, I'm going to press T for the top and Shift E for even, and those will align them evenly or evenly spacing them. I'm going to mark and select this row and I'm going to use left, Shift C for spacing them evenly vertical. Now I can align these other objects as well. So here, top, like this, top, T for top. Now we know that these are not evenly spaced, and so I'm going to use here for left, L for left, L for left. Select this, Shift E here and Shift E. These are now properly aligned with each other. Shift C. One more thing. Okay, Shift C. Yeah, now they are perfectly aligned with each other. One more thing that helps with the alignment are the alignment guides. If I go to my view menu, I can activate my alignment guides from here. We can also use the shortcut Alt Shift A to turn that on or off. I also have dynamic guides, Alt Shift D. Now that I have my guides turned on, if I move this element here, you can immediately see the spacing working out. So it's showing me that this is now equidistant from the bottom objects and the side objects. Now I can let my mouse button go and it will be aligned here properly. So let's say I move it down here and I can use the alignment guides and just place it right like so. Here I didn't get this one right, maybe. Okay. It's a little bit hard to see these lines, so if I go to the Windows menu, then I can choose the Docker's Live Guides. I can change this color to be darker one. Okay, and now if you see, the guides will appear more distinctly. So in here I have the ability to change the color of the alignment guides. I'm going to make it something fairly dark, which is a black color, maybe black. Okay, now that they are properly visible, now undo that command. So I could have easily done it with this, and you'll notice I can line these up so these are perfectly centered. We're going to discuss about the differences between the copy and duplicate. We will also look at the paste special. Now we're looking at copy versus duplicate and paste special. So as you first may think, copy and duplicate are the same, then they're actually quite different. So when we make a copy of an object in CorelDRAW or any other application, Windows has to take that information and put it on what's referred to as Windows Clipboard. To do this, Windows needs to create a temp file or temporary file. Once it is there, we can place that into another application or onto another page in CorelDRAW. So if you want to watch my cursor, I can do Control C. The spinning blue circle, it actually is called a throbber. That's Windows writing the temp file to the hard drive. And you Control V. It is going to paste right over. We can see that we have copied the element. The problem with creating temp files is that it takes up a space on the hard drive, and also excessive temp files can really bog down the system. Think of it like a hair in a drain. So duplicate is the best solution. So let me delete this element. So if I select this object and if I give Control D, it is going to duplicate this object. The reason it's duplicated in this space because in the properties bar, I have set the distance. I have to reset that as well. Say here it was by default 0.5, so instead I will just give it 0.0 mm. Now if I duplicate this and give Control D, it is going to create the duplicate exactly on top of this object. And if I click and drag, I can move the duplicate over to the side. Now one more thing with respect to duplicate is ability to do a smart duplicate. I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to delete this element. So while I select this object, I'm going to do Control D. Now on my interactive bar, we can see that this object is 15.53 mm by 15.53 mm. And this element is in this X and Y position on the page itself. Now based on the 0, position of the ruler, if I click in here and use the mathematical formula, I can actually move my duplicate copy. So in here, I'm going to type +1, +1. And I'm going to move it, press enter. That's going to reduce my size. So here I can move it for +1. That will move 1 mm. Right? So like this, I can move my objects right like so. If I move it here and give Control D, move it here, it is going to create duplicates of that. Control D. Say difference between this and this, let's just say I'm going to delete this, make it 35 here and 155 here, make it proper 15 by 15. Now if I give +35 plus 10, give tab, give enter, it's going to move around right like so. After giving Control D, so here +35, that is going to be +5. So that is going to give me a 5 mm gap. Say I want this on 5 mm gap, particularly on the x-axis. So I can set here of 5 mm, say 5 mm, give Control D. It's going to give me 15 mm plus some other size as well. I'm going to delete this 15 mm. So it is going to be +15 plus 10. Enter. So Control D. select here, make it 0. Now it's going to be 15 mm size. So 15 plus 25. I'm going to set it to 25 mm. With Control D, Control D, it is going to give me the series right like so. And about the downside, and I'm going to select this, set it to 0. So now for the downside, I'm going to 15 mm plus 10, that is going to be 25 mm. So if I go here and give 25 mm, I'm going to select these, Control D, it's going to give up Control D, and I can make a grid right like so. So you can mix and match, and now other thing I can do, I can resize the element very precisely. So if I log this out and if I give here, this will allow me to maintain this aspect ratio. So maybe I'll put plus 100 plus 3 by 16. It's going to give me a little bit plus sign here. I can give it percentage as well, so maybe 150 times by 150, and that agrees my size of the boxes. So rather than getting on my calculator and trying to figure out what would be the size, I can simply just go ahead and type in the value and it will bring up the output right in front of me. Now I want to talk about something called paste special. It allows me to create links back to the application to an item it was copied from. So if I select this element, you can see there's a blue diagonal line at the bottom left hand corner. Means this is indication, we call it OLE object. OLE stands for object linking and embedding. If I select this element and double click, it is going to launch the application that it came from. So in this case, it will be Axle. I select this Axle, and here if you notice, I grab one of these elements and maybe change color, or I can change the value of it. So instead of that, maybe I'll just give it 100 here, tab update value here. Now let's go back here and check. The value has been updated right here. So I can return back to my CorelDRAW, and the advantage of using the OLE object is that if I am preparing, let's say, a product spec sheet for a device and manufacturing, we may change the part number or price may change or something like that. I can put an OLE object in here, and then just before the print time, I can actually through and do some editing. It makes it very easy to update the file. If you have a paste special object in there or a linked object in there, this brings an on copy versus duplicate and space special. I'm gonna go ahead and now let's try some tools and create the logo. Delete page, delete page. Now I want to delete the page. Maybe I just Control A, delete. Letter. Okay. I'll show you the steps through get this design of a logo. When you create a new document, and make sure it is RGB. And you're using a letter instead of A4. letter. Now I want to create a top hat with a text around the perimeter. So I'll start with a rectangle or a square. So by using a rectangle tool, I'll just click and drag right like so. And I want to make this a rectangle 1.5 inches wide, and make sure this height is 1.75. Unlock this 1.5 by 1.75, and now I'm going to lock this. Next step, we want to create a couple of ellipses. I'm going to require 2 of them. Just click and drag 2 of them. Now I want this first ellipse, I want this to be 1.5 inches wide. 1.5. And 0.5 in height. 0.5 in height. Okay. Second ellipse is going to be a bit bigger. I'm going to use a 3 inches wide and 1 inch in height. So make this by 3 by 1 and hit enter. Now I'm going to take my first ellipse and place it here on top of my rectangle. I'm going to make this, make sure my duplicate is 0, 0 here. Okay, Control D, and I'm going to drag right like so. Okay. This will give the illusion of the flat top. I'm going to select the first element. Select this. I want to trim this out. Now I'm going to take this element, Shift key, and I'm going to weld this. This will form a single object. Now to create a hat band, I'll just select this and give Control D. I'm going to select my shape tool. Click and drag, select these up, and click and drag right like so. Alright, so I want this to be 10% black. Select the element here and make this 100% black. This one 100% black. Now I'm going to move this into this position and make this 100% black as well. Maybe I just want to move this down. So right click, order the back of the page. Okay. I want to select all of the elements and I want to go to object menu and go to group and give group. Now it's a group. I can select and move it right like so. I can select P to align this at the center of the page. It's time to put a lettering on it. Type CSU and go to fonts. I'm going to choose the fonts Brock. So in case you don't have the font, you can go to Google that font, maybe Brock font, search font, and I get Brock. It's not the rock font I'm looking for. I'm looking for something like this. Rock Bold is the font. Rock Bold font. Okay, go to all, and here I can get my Rock Bold font, download. Click, close the ad, and there I have my Rock Bold font. I'm gonna just go ahead and install right quickly. Okay, moving back to our CorelDRAW document. Okay, so I want this to be rock. B-R-O-C-K, rock. Okay. I want this to be 45 points. Here, 45, enter. When I select this shape tool, then you have this option here. It is allow me to reposition these letters. I'm going to click this one, select it, and move it up. Maybe down. Select this and move this down as well. Alright, so I'm gonna make it white, and I'll place it at the center. The font is way too big for the hat. Maybe I just want to scale it down, right, like so. Okay. And I'm going to use my type tool, chimney, sweep united. And of course I'm going to use the rock font for this one as well to keep the consistency with the logo font. Okay, Broadway rock. Alright, and second number, I'm going to just give an address here. Land a number 4746. Okay, make the center line. Okay, I need to put this on an arch top and bottom, so I'm going to use my ellipse tool. You can drag, holding control, and maybe I want to place this at the center. Press P. It's not properly. Maybe I want to scale this up. Holding Shift. Maybe holding Alt and Shift would do, right? Now maybe I could just go here, lock this. Maybe I don't want 50%. You want 25%? That might work. Okay. So now click on this text, fit text to path. I'm going to show it where I want to align this. So click here and it's aligned right here. Same thing for this. Go text, fit to path, and use these symbol, and I want this to be up here. Okay, that works fine. I can just move it a bit, not just a little bit. Okay, seems fine. I can just select this and maybe remove the stroke color, or I could just simply go ahead and delete the circle. Doesn't make a difference. All I want is to make this look like a logo here and the font here. Finally, I would just like to rotate this by 330% degree. Not the font. I'll just right click here and I'm gonna lock the font. I just want to hide this for now. I'll select this and go 330. All right. Now go to my objects there. Group of 4 objects. We want to appear that. Object show all. They're back. So that's our logo. You can just select this, Shift F2. This is what it'll look like. Maybe zoom it back a bit.